are talking Accident Man 2, Hitman's Holiday. And this one stars Scott Adkins as a character called Mike, the Accident Man. Now this is obviously a sequel to the original Accident Man, a movie of which I have not seen. So I kind of went into this cold not having seen the first one. But I found it quite accessible. It didn't really matter that I hadn't seen the first one. It does kind of follow on from the events of the first movie, but it gives you enough in exposition so you understand the kind of the status quo going into this movie. So don't worry too much if you haven't seen the original, though I expect if you have, you'd probably appreciate the kind of the maybe this movie a little more. So Scott Adkins plays a character called Mike, who is a hitman whose speciality is making his victims look like they've been killed in an accident, hence Accident Man. And after the events of the first film, he has fled London and is now kind of on a holiday or a vacation in Malta, just having this kicking back, you know. And he ends up running into an old friend of his who used to kind of be in the Hitman game himself, and they kind of strike up or rekindle a kind of a friendship, and they end up kind of going in business together and end up becoming quite successful. Scott Adkins being the kind of the muscle, this other guy almost being his cue to Scott Adkins kind of James Bond. He's much more of a gadget kind of type guy, and you know, they seem to be having quite a good time, enjoying the kind of the work and their kind of relationship, and Scott Adkins actually is starting to enjoy life a little bit. But the party soon ends when Scott Adkins is blamed for a hit or an attempted hit on a powerful crime lord's son, and he kind of denies that it's him, obviously, and has an alibi. But they kidnap his friend and say, "You've got to protect this son, this wayward troublemaker, from all of these other assassins that are now trying to kill him." What will happen? You'll have to watch the movie and find out. So let's discuss. Okay, this is an action comedy. It's not meant to be taken particularly kind of seriously. What can we say that we think works in this movie? Now, Scott Adkins is a British martial arts actor. One of the things I was surprised about was, you know, having reviewed a lot of movies, a lot of kind of movies aimed for an American audience, because that's the kind of the biggest, you know, target demographic. British films often have like English actors put on American accents to try and appeal to American audiences. But I found this one was kind of like just, it didn't really worry too much about that. It kind of was very much using kind of colloquialisms and kind of references from the UK. Even the title, Hitman's Holiday. Holiday in America generally means Christmas. I found it quite refreshing that you had a movie that seemed to aim for a British audience. I mean, the kind of what the whole Brits abroad thing. If you're from the UK, you know what I'm talking about. But the British people have somewhat of a reputation, especially kind of in countries like, you know, Spain, Malta, things like that, for being somewhat kind of infamous, shall we say, when they're abroad. So I actually quite appreciate, as someone from the UK, this movie kind of leaning into its kind of its British kind of cast here and its kind of British kind of sensibilities, which I found quite refreshing. Now that's obviously only going to apply to people from the UK. If you're from the States or anywhere else, that might not be as a big thing. So what else can we talk about? Okay, this movie is quite a lot of fun. I like Scott Adkins as a kind of an action hero, so to speak, but I sometimes feel his roles can be a little flat. You know, they don't have quite as much personality maybe in some of his kind of characters than some other kind of like action stars. But this character, because the movie is played somewhat comedic, it kind of reminds me of like a Ryan Reynolds kind of style kind of character. You know, fast talking, lots of kind of jokes, not taking things too kind of seriously. It almost feels like, had this movie been a higher budget, it would have been something that Ryan Reynolds would have played. It's very Deadpool-esque, if that makes sense. So if you're a fan of Deadpool, you might like this kind of darker kind of sense of humour, with kind of lots of gratuitous violence and killing and things like that. So I think it's very much that kind of movie. if you like Deadpool, lots of stylized violence, lots of kind of action sequences, but a lot of kind of jokes, a lot of kind of gags about, you know, killing people and things like that. So it's actually it makes the character of Mike quite a personable and relatable character to a certain degree. And they've wisely made him not indestructible here. You know, he has this woman who he pays to kind of like sneak up on him so he can train, constantly kind of kick his ass and stuff. So it does seem like he has, you know, vulnerabilities and kind of flaws, which again makes him kind of a kind of more of a, you know, not a Gary Sue, so to speak. So I thought that was all pretty good. And then the action sequences here are really strong, especially the last one. Now I do have a problem with some of these action sequences we'll talk to, but choreography wise and in regards to spectacle, fantastic. Particularly the kind of the final fight was absolutely kind of thrilling to watch. The humour also kind of quite worked for me as well. I have to say, although this isn't like a laugh out loud, rolling on the floor, you know, gag a minute, it's certainly an amusing film, and the characters are all quite kind of like unique and kind of personable in kind of their own right. So I kind of quite enjoyed it. Having this kind of this setting as Malta as well, I think gave this movie a kind of a somewhat of a nice sun-drenched kind of like flavour to it, which I thought was kind of quite fun. And the movie's pretty kind of punchy. I mean, in more ways than one. There's lots of kind of fight scenes, but it's also quite a fast-paced movie with kind of lots of action sequences, and you're never waiting too long for you know, for anything else to kind of happen. The storyline's relatively basic, but I don't think it necessarily needs to be particularly kind of deep on this movie. So let's talk about what I think doesn't work. I think one of the mistakes this movie does make is it kind of, we learn that there is this master ninja who is the kind of like the best at the assassins, and obviously he's the final fight. But the problem there is it makes the other fights leading up to that feel like you're just treading water to some degree, because we know that this one's still to come. So although some of the other fight scenes are quite fun, they don't really feel like there's much stakes involved, because you just feel like you know this kind of ninja character is still to be seen, and obviously we know Scott Adkins' character is going to fight him, which means these other sequences feel like they're more of just kind of like filler to a certain degree. I mean, they're great to look at. I do think sometimes they drag on a little bit though, particularly kind of one fight where we have two fights running concurrently. We've got kind of Scott Adkins versus this clown and a colleague of his fighting this other guy. And I felt it went on for just a little bit too long, to be honest with you. You're kind of thinking, I kind of want it to wrap up now and the story to kind of move forward. Some story elements, I don't know if work 100%. The whole premise of this movie is Scott Adkins has got to protect this son of this crime boss. And the son of the crime boss is meant to be bratish and kind of annoying, and he is, but maybe a little bit too much. When we spend time with this character and we kind of get to know him, his scenes I felt were kind of like a little grating. Now that is by design, but at the same time it's a little bit grating to having to watch these kind of sequences, and his character is so over the top. I think it kind of goes just a little bit kind of over the pale sometimes, and it relies a little bit too much on like poop humour and stuff. And I quite like poop humour, but yeah, this one I don't know if it 100% kind of worked for me. And the movie's plot, you know, I don't know if you're going to really watch this for a complex plot, but it's kind of, you know, it's somewhat kind of by the numbers, kind of in kind of plot wise and stuff like that. But overall, I've got to say I had fun with this movie. It's a fun action movie with a very, very likeable kind of character in Scott Adkins' Accident Man. Far more kind of animated and personable than I think a lot of his other kind of characters that have seemed somewhat kind of one note previously. So I'm glad to see that this character has a little bit more kind of outside of the kind of the action kind of stuff. He's a little bit more of a, you know, a character in himself. And I actually quite like the fact that his whole thing, he just wants to help his friend. And I quite like that kind of, there's a bit of a speech with Ray Stevens' character about, you know, how he kind of values friendship and stuff. And I actually thought that was quite pertinent. And, you know, I was thinking, oh, please don't let this kind of like just be like something that's going to end up falling flat on its face. And it doesn't. I think it was quite good. I quite enjoyed this one. I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. It's one of Scott Adkins' stronger movies. As I said, I've not seen the first one, so I can't say how much it compares to the original movie. But for me, I enjoyed this one quite a bit. 7 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.